Super Metroid is the best Metroid. And no, this is not up for debate. In fact, I'm going to double down and say that Super Metroid is the best designed video game, period. Do I have your attention? Before we dive in, we should have a bit of a history lesson. In the days of old, video games were very straightforward. Most of the time you had either arcade games or side-scrollers. But somewhere along the way, games took on more adventurous traits. The original Zelda is a good example of this. Instead of linear progression from one area to the next, players had to explore the world, find power-ups, and figure out the path forward. And oftentimes, there was more than one path forward. There was also the point-and-click adventure genre. One of my personal favorites is Maniac Mansion. In this game, you skulk around a not-so-abandoned mansion in search of your missing girlfriend. Along the way, you'll find various objects and use them to solve puzzles and whatnot. The twist here is that there are multiple ways to reach the end, complete with their own unique conclusions. Now, there were obviously other types of adventure games, but I feel like these examples accurately represent what the adventure game landscape looked like in the late 80s and early 90s. Games were expanding and becoming less and less linear as time went on. Metroid for the NES is another good example of this expansion. It had linear elements in the vein of Mega Man or Contra, but also more open-ended elements like those found in Zelda. A common problem with these games is that they tended to be very nebulous. The game world would typically be very maze-like, and while these games definitely had an audience, they were tough for those who were new to video games. Heck, they were tough for the more experienced of us in the case of Metroid. And this brings us to the majesty that is Super Metroid. Okay, I'll tone down the Metroid simping. But in all seriousness, it's tough to find a single game that embodies the essence of good game design to the same degree as the third Metroid title. Upon starting the game, you'll find yourself in a desolate space station, one that was bustling with life just moments ago. This segment allows you to come to terms with the controls without having to contend with enemies or tricky platforming. After making your way through some grimly decorated rooms, you come into a room housing the Metroid hatchling, the same one you would have saved at the end of Metroid 2. Before you know it, you're being attacked by a giant dragon-like foe known as Ridley, the very same Ridley from the first Metroid game. This fight is designed to give you a chance to learn how to fight, but without the threat of failure. You see, you can't actually lose here. After you deal enough damage, or take enough damage, Ridley flies off with the hatchling, setting off a self-destruct sequence in the process. This escape sequence pushes you to become comfortable with the basics of maneuvering Samus, except now you need to contend with falling debris, steam spewing from busted pipes, and a space station on the verge of implosion. And this is on top of the timer you'll be working against. Before too long, you escape and head to the nearby planet known as Zebes, the same place we visited in the first game. At this point, you would have become familiar with the basics of movement and flirted with the game's combat mechanics. Your lessons aren't done yet, but that's okay because none of this feels like a tutorial, even though it is. Exploring the planet puts us in a similar situation to that of the space station. There are no enemies here, but a lot of platforming. Initially, the only difference is that the platforming has become a bit more complex. Before long, we head down an elevator and arrive at a very familiar scene, the opening area from the original Metroid. And, like in that game, a familiar power-up is located in the exact same spot as before. Now, let's pause here a second. One of the key characteristics of a Metroidvania, or even a survival horror game, is the way you obtain keys or items in order to progress. So if we go back to the morph ball scene, notice there's no way to get out of here without using the newly acquired power-up on this here gap. A few rooms over, you'll need to use this again to obtain the missile power-up, except this time, the game forces you to shoot in multiple directions, something you had no need to use up to this point. At this stage, you've obtained 2 power-ups, and the game forced you to use them in order to move forward. Once again, the game has you in a tutorial, but without being blatantly obvious about it. Now, I should tell you that I won't be walking you through the game step by step, but I do need to cover one more bit about this early stage of the game. Now that the enemies are alerted to your presence, you need to fight your way back to the surface. Eventually you come across this gap near the ground, and you know what to do here. So you enter and drop down into the chasm. You head through the only available door and eventually find yourself in a room with another Chozo statue and an upgrade item accompanying it. But as soon as you grab said item, the doors lock behind you and the statue lights up. It's time for your first boss fight. This boss is intimidating in some ways. You've only experienced light combat thus far, aside from the intense encounter with Ridley. The Chozo statue spews a barrage of chaos your way while you do your best to attack it and stay alive. This is the point where the game has now primed you for the remainder of the adventure. You've acquired the basic skills to move forward and can set off to complete the mission. Of course, the game isn't done teaching you new tricks. That's one of the best things about Metroidvania games. They constantly throw new items and mechanics at you throughout the journey, and they do it in a mostly organic way. Castlevania eventually embraced this with Symphony of the Night, and modern Metroidvania titles continue to evolve this design further. And honestly, it's immensely satisfying. But anyways, at this point you can begin to explore planet Zebes to your heart's content. The world of Super Metroid is made up of 6 distinct areas, the first of which is Criteria. This is the area we found ourselves in upon landing on the planet's surface. It's got a distinct cave-like appearance and a number of leftover remnants from our time here in the first game. Brinstar is the next area we explore. This area is distinctly organic, with lush greens and an assortment of local critters occupying the area. Worth noting is that Brinstar has 3 distinct varieties. There's the lush green area you see when you first arrive, this white sandy area, and this reddish industrial-like area. Norfair is next. This area is deep underground near the planet's core and therefore is very hot and filled with lava. This area has a few variants as well, including this bubble-filled environment, which is borrowed from the first game, and Lower Norfair, a military-inspired construct of sorts. The wrecked ship is interesting for being, well, a literal wrecked ship that crash-landed at an undisclosed point in time. It's not a very large area, but still a very cool one. It's initially filled with ghouls and has no electricity, which means it's dark and our save pod, refill stations, and most doors are unavailable until we can restore the power. And even after the power is restored, this area can be especially brutal since it's littered with hazards everywhere you go. Then we have Meridia, a personal favorite of mine. This water-filled labyrinth is as moody as they come and expertly shows how the Super Nintendo can produce a dark, intense atmosphere. The paths here can be extremely difficult to navigate and the enemies are somewhat tough to deal with, though they do move in slow, predictable patterns. First-time players can expect to spend a lot of time here. Lastly, we have Tourian. This underground lab houses the game's namesake, the Metroids. It's a small, chaotic area that can easily test your patience towards the end with its many projectiles and environmental hazards. Our hero, Samus Aran, has a number of new weapons and items at her disposal as well. The beam power-ups include the Charge Shot, Ice Beam, Wave Beam, Spazer, and Plasma Beam, but these function differently than in the first game. In that game, each time you'd find a new beam, it would simply replace whichever one you were currently using. So if you gave up the Ice Beam for the Wave Beam and then found yourself needing the Ice Beam again, you'd have to go find it. This time though, the various beam power-ups stack, making for one super versatile weapon. On a side note, these beams can be used on their own and in some pretty unique ways. While none of these are especially useful, I can still appreciate their inclusion. The missiles and bombs, as I mentioned earlier, also return, but are now complemented with the addition of super missiles and power bombs. There are a few functional use items as well. The speed boost allows Samus to burst into high speed and plow through anything in her path. The space jump and screw attack both allow Samus to jump mid-air multiple times in a row, if you're good enough. The grapple beam is a non-combat item that allows Samus to latch onto certain blocks, or even some enemies, in order to swing across larger gaps. The spring ball is simple in that it allows you to jump while in morph ball form. And the X-ray scope allows Samus to see through walls and discover hidden items and passages. This item, along with the spring ball, are optional items in the game, but can still be very useful. In addition to all of these, they've also added a new type of energy tank, the reserve tank. These tanks fill whenever you nab an energy pellet while already at full health, and can be used whenever you find yourself in a pinch. Samus will also find two suit upgrades, the Varia suit and the Gravity suit. The Varia suit simply allows Samus to enter the high temperature areas within Norfair. The Gravity suit, conversely, allows Samus to navigate through water and lava without slowing her down or damaging her. The game has a few new and returning boss characters as well. Interestingly, each of them can be dispatched in a number of ways. Well, for the most part anyway. While each can be dispatched with a charge beam, some of them have more unique options available. You'll first come up against Kraid. While the game has a sort of fake out before discovering this big dude, the big bad himself is absolutely humongous. He stands 2 screens tall and throws an array of projectiles your way, and if you get too close, he'll swat at you with his stubby T-Rex arms. Kraid doesn't really have an especially noteworthy shortcut of any kind, but you can use your limited supply of super missiles to take care of him with a swiftness, but that's really about it. Phantoon is a bit of a fan favorite these days. This haunting creature can phase in and out of the material realm, meaning you can only hurt him at very specific and brief points in time. A common misconception is that it's a bad idea to use super missiles on him. This is because it will trigger him to unleash this wave attack that swoops across the screen and can be very hard to avoid. However, like I said, this is a misconception and a pretty big one. You see, you actually want to use your super missiles because they'll take him out very quickly. So how do you survive his wave attack? Well, at this point in the game, you may have picked up on the fact that you can flip through the air while having your power beam fully charged, and this will make you impervious to certain attacks. It can even destroy smaller enemies. So the trick is simply to use this to your advantage here. Time your jumps just right and you'll take little to no damage at all. The fight with Meridia's Dragoon is probably the most well known of the bunch. She initially seems like a very tough boss. You enter her chamber and are bombarded with a number of electrical shots from the walls. Then, when she shows up, she's aggressive as hell, swooping in for the attack just as fast as she zooms away. She even gets to a point where she'll swoop down, pick you up, and start hitting you with her tail. By default, this is a tough fight, but there is another way. Remember the electrical shots I mentioned a moment ago? Well, these little wall cannons can be destroyed, and this is a huge help all on its own, but that's not the trick. To take care of Dragoon quickly, you'll want to destroy these cannons as soon as you enter her chamber. Then, wait for her to pick you up and select your grapple beam. Now, she's going to start swinging you around and hitting you with her tail, but keep an eye on those wall cannons. As soon as she swings you close enough to one of them, latch onto it with the grapple beam and let the electrical shock do the rest. Easy peasy. Just keep in mind that this hurts you too, so if your health is especially low, I wouldn't recommend trying to electrocute her. Next up is Ridley, and I really wish I could say there was some trick here, but there isn't. Just unload on this dude until he falls. He will randomly give up, but I haven't figured out how to make him do this, so if you know, please tell me. There are a few mini bosses as well, but I only want to mention one here, Crocomire. This bulbous beast is loud, obnoxious, and has no real weakness. The fight itself is fairly straightforward, but you know what? Just watch. And make sure to pay attention to where I'm aiming Samus's arm cannon. From here on out, I'm going to spoil the story a good bit, so if you're wanting to experience this for yourself, now's the time to click away. Though, to be honest, the story in early Metroid games is paper thin, so there really isn't too much to spoil here. After the 4 big bads are dealt with, a passage opens up and grants you access to Tourian. This is where Mother Brain and the Metroids reside. Earlier, while we were visiting Meridia, we encountered some pretty pathetic Metroid-like creatures. These are Mocktroids. These are essentially the space pirates' attempt at cloning the Metroid. In Tourian, we encounter the real thing, and these guys are no joke. These jellyfish-like creatures will not hesitate to swoop in, latch onto you, and drain your life. The only way to dispatch them is to freeze them with the ice beam and blast them with some missiles, just like in the original game. After some time, we enter a room with a creature we can't seem to hurt in any way. Our only choice is to use the screw attack to bypass him and move on to the next room. In here we find a few very dusty husks. Whatever happened to these things wasn't good. Then we encounter another one of those bugs we were unable to damage a minute ago, when suddenly a giant Metroid swoops in and takes care of it for us. But it's not all sunshine and rainbows. We now know what these things are capable of. It attacks an enemy we couldn't even begin to touch and turned it into literal dust in a matter of seconds. But why didn't it do that to us? Why did it let us live? Pushing forward, we find ourselves in a very familiar and hellish room. Atomic donuts and other projectiles are firing off at us from every which way, and the ground is covered in acid. We are faced with the very same barriers we encountered in the first game and deal with them in the same way we did back then as well. Eventually, we come face to face with Mother Brain, the space pirate leader. And like before, we unload on her, forcing our way through her glass barrier. Eventually, we break through the glass and begin our onslaught. Before you know it, she falls to the ground. But it's not over yet. I still get chills when I see her stand up and scream. This was completely out of left field back in 1994. Her chamber had already did a number on my resources and she wasn't done yet. This was poised to be a challenge for the ages. Unloading countless missiles and super missiles seems to do almost nothing to her. And before long, she unleashes more powerful attacks. Playing through this for the first time is crazy stressful. You've run out of your most powerful weapons, your health is running low, and you only have the charge beam to defend yourself. But then, it gets worse. She unloads this massive attack that sends our hero slamming into the wall, and our energy meter plummets. When she stops, Samus struggles to stand up again. We have to mash buttons to get her back up on her feet and back in the fight. But Mother Brain continues her onslaught. Now, I'm going to pause for a second. Put yourself in the mindset of a gamer playing this for the very first time. What are you supposed to think here? You're literally knocking on death's door and have little hope of defeating this foe. Imagine the dread we would have felt going through this for the very first time. Getting back to the fight, we're about to accept our fate when the giant Metroid swoops in and latches onto Mother Brain's head, absorbing the powerful blast she planned to use to finish us off. It drains her until she is nearly bone dry before heading our way. But instead of attacking us, it heals us. It's giving us back our energy. This moment had players thinking that we might just have a shot to take her out. Sure, we still only had our charge shot, but with a full life bar, maybe we could do this. As the Metroid heals Samus, Mother Brain stands up and starts attacking the creature. Wounded, it flies off, but this is a fake out as it attempts one last attack on Mother Brain. But she sees it coming and destroys the Metroid. The Metroid's corpse falls onto Samus, and with it, grants her the power it had absorbed from Mother Brain moments ago. Samus is now the one to be feared in this situation, as her power beam is all kinds of hyped up. We are now the predator, with Mother Brain, our prey. With Mother Brain defeated, it's time for another escape sequence. This final battle isn't what it seems. It's not especially difficult, and it's not meant to be. But you're meant to think that it is. Instead, this battle is your reward for mastering the game's many mechanics and completing the adventure. And few games feel as rewarding as this. As we fly away, it feels like a giant mission accomplished. The game has several endings of sorts. Depending on how long you take to complete the game, you'll see Samus in different forms at the end, but this isn't all. You see, throughout the game, you'll encounter harmless creatures that just happen to live here, but some of them will teach you some helpful techniques. During the escape sequence, you'll have a chance to save these critters, though the game never tells you this. To do this, you'll simply need to return to the room where you first fought the Chozo statue and shoot the rightmost wall. After you fly away, you'll notice a small glimmer indicating that the critters also made their escape. Even with all the praise I throw at this game, it does have some flaws. For one, the controls can be a bit much for newcomers to grasp. The jumping, in particular, can feel a bit floaty, and that makes it difficult to maintain control. Coming into terms with the flip and the hop is something that even I struggle with from time to time, and I've played this game at least yearly since 1994. The other issue comes from the environmental design of Meridia and Lower Norfair. Meridia in particular can feel like a very complex maze much of the time, and its large rooms tend to require some of the most complicated maneuvers in the game, usually due to their reliance on your mastery of the grapple beam. Lower Norfair doesn't have exactly the same problem. It's much smaller in scope, but has a way of closing off paths behind you. This can lead to a lot of wandering around, trying to find a way out, and after your victory over Ridley, getting lost is the last thing you want. Still, these gripes are ultimately minor, especially when looking at Super Metroid as a whole. Super Metroid is a masterclass in good game design. It never tells you where to go or how to succeed, but instead nudges you in the right direction without saying a word. It lets your own intuition take over, and for that reason alone, few games have bested this one. If I sound biased here, it's because I am. This, ladies and gents, is my absolute favorite game of all time, and the one game that I'd call a perfect video game, even if there's really no such thing. For those of you wondering how much Nintendo paid me for this ad, I wish I could tell you. But in all seriousness, I just really love Super Metroid. And I hope this video made a good case for that adoration. I say this at the end of every video, but I cannot stress it enough. Thank you for watching until the very end. I really pour a lot into these projects, and I love that I can share them with all of you. I hope to see you all next time.